Good morning from Easier Habits Live. I'm Alec from Easier Habits. This is Meg.
Hi, yes, I'm a global English communication coach.
So we're coming back from being sick. We'll keep this relatively short and simple because, when you're overwhelmed, we're still sick. We don't want to be coughing all over the camera.
Yeah, and you don't want to see that anyways, so.
All right, we'll keep it to tips and a short update.
Sounds great. So communication tip for the day. This is one that I actually still need to work on. But managing expectations when you are out of the office for whatever reason, whether you're on vacation or you're sick or something like that, people will try to get a hold of you. And some people will have that expectation that you will get back to them within a certain amount of time. And if you don't, there can begin to be not such good feelings. And so if you can preemptively, obviously if you go on vacation, right, have an out of office reply or let people who might need to contact you for whatever reason know that you will not be able to answer or something like that. Now, when you're sick, it's a little bit harder. And sometimes you just have to rely on the grace of people. But if you can at least tell the most important, like, key players, right? The people that you work with the most who are relying on you the most. Obviously, if you have any appointments that you're going to have to cancel, if you have anyone who is waiting on you for something, let them know that you're sick. And with these days of COVID, I feel like it's a lot more acceptable to be sick and then not work than it used to be. I remember I used to always just push through and work even while I was sick, and I would go to school even when I was sick. But thankfully that's not really a thing that people say is okay anymore because, COVID and infecting everybody around you, which is great. We could infect people before too, just with other things.
Yeah.
So
I feel like it's also different when you're younger and have strong immune systems.
True.
So the older you get, like the more likely, the harder it can be to throw off some of these things.
Right. Yeah. So just, tell the people who are most likely to need you during that time that you're out. You don't have to give I should be back by this time, right? To say, right. I'm out, I'll let you know when I'm back.
Yeah, do that. Do very short email, fast, and then so you don't have to worry about it. Because the worrying about that, like, I haven't gotten back to so-and-so is not going to help you, rest and recover. So.
Yeah, so that's my tip for today.
All right. So obviously you've been sick for a while, but what are your plans for today?
So today, gosh, I guess basically for, just to kind of fill in how I was sick, I started feeling just a little bit of a sore throat Friday evening. I, spent the day at the temple doing good things and it was great. And then kind of was like, oh, I'm not feeling so fabulous by the time I got home. And then I woke up and I had an early morning meeting on Saturday, which I went to, and that, was a good meeting and everything. And then, my sore throat was really strong at that point and I was starting to cough, but I, grinned and bore it or whatever. Went through that meeting and then I was going to try and keep going and I crashed. And when I crash, I really crash, as in, like, I basically slept from, Saturday mid-morning until like yesterday morning. I mean, I had some, awake times and I tried to move a little bit, but when I crashed hard and I had a fever and it was bad. And so I did absolutely nothing productive, or at least what I would think of as productive. It was productive as far as recovering because I was resting, and that is important. And I have to remind myself of that. So I'm still basically where I was last Friday, and I have a lot of things to get done, and I'm going into it with the mindset of, yep, I had a break and it's okay, and I don't need to beat up on myself for getting sick because people get sick. That's a thing, and it's okay. And so I'm going to fill in the rest of the questionnaire from our marketing consultant today, as well as getting back to a lot of messages that people had sent me last week and over the weekend. So some of them are birthday messages, but there's other things in there as well. So I need to
go through them. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and I think I guess going into the business tip, but this is more of like a health tip, but as an entrepreneur where you have a business and you have to manage that, and there's usually bigger consequences for being sick. You don't just have like sick time off that you can take from a company, right? How to manage that. The business tip for handling sickness is going to differ a little bit person to person, but basically most people have a pattern of being sick. So Meg will get really sick really hard for a few days and be out. I will point out though, your biggest jump in health was when you were able to get up and walk around.
But I couldn't get up and walk around until I could get up and walk around.
Right. And so like, you know, as soon as you can do that, like that has a huge impact on your health.
Yeah.
I don't get hit as hard, so I don't have the dizziness. I don't have like the blood pressure issues and the other things. So I don't get hit as hard. But every time I get sick, my perma sinus infection flares up, and so
I will be for way longer.
I will be congested for weeks unless I take some kind of antibiotic, which isn't actually going to kill the sinus infection apparently, but like just subdue it for a while.
It's so sad.
So I try not to do that if I can, because there's all sorts of other side effects. It's like, all right, if it's not going to actually cure my sinus infection, why bother? And so I try, doing all of the things, drinking lots of water, like doing gentle yoga outside.
Got your neti pot and your...
Yeah, neti pot. I've got my herbal supplements, and like I have a pretty dialed in routine to like mitigate the difficulty. But yesterday, for example, Meg was still feeling awful, but she wanted to like help out more. But I know the pattern. It's like, look, me doing dinner for the kids, versus her doing dinner for the kids or something like that, or being with the kids in the afternoon, it's not going to make a huge difference for me, because I will slowly get better and it will take a long time, versus like her actually taking the time, doing what's necessary to recover, like the walks, but like otherwise resting is not going to help her recover. So it sucks when you get sick, but there's a pattern. Experiment with it, figure out what works for you, what doesn't work for you, to mitigate it, and kind of plan. Don't plan according to like, I think there's like some magical thinking that you can get involved in. Like, oh well, maybe I'll be better today. Well, it's like, is like, how long does it usually take you to get over being sick? What's your usual pattern? Because chances are that next time you get sick, you'll have whatever similar patterns. So
and don't feel guilty about it. And that's, I say this when, like, yesterday I cried. Like, and I don't cry very often. I was in tears because I just wanted to be back into my normal routine. And it's not like I hadn't gotten sick, even like a few months ago. And I was sick for a lot longer in the fall. But there was something about this, and I wanted to get back into things, and I couldn't. And, I felt guilty for you having to do so much, and then for me not being able to do my work stuff and just like laying in bed and watching anime all day, which, there's a part of me that's like, that's my dream life. So I think that's where a lot of that guilt comes from, is, recognizing that there's a part of me that likes that.
Right.
But also knowing that I am at the point where I do get moving as soon as I can. I know I'm not staying in bed just so that I can stay in bed. I'm staying in bed specifically to recover, and there's only so many things I can do, right? Yep. And so I could lay there doing nothing. I could lay there reading a book or listening to an audiobook. Probably not even reading a book. I can't have any like cognitive anything. And so as long as I know myself well enough to know what that point is, that I can start getting up and going for a walk, then I have to be okay with that. And I have to give myself the grace that that's good enough. That's great.
Well, I feel like there's an underlying thing, right? So you recognize one of the reasons why you feel guilty when you're sick is because, in some ways, lying in bed watching anime would be your ideal life.
Right?
So you have like a baseline story about yourself that is, and I have some of this too, that is like, all things being equal, I'm not a workaholic. I don't necessarily, I love helping people, but I don't necessarily derive my value as a human being from work.
Yeah.
And so, being on time, delivering things, being productive is a habit and a routine I consciously construct for myself. But like I will be a procrastinator if I just given my natural tendencies. Yep. And so, but if that's the story I have of myself, it's not so bad when I'm working, because I have this like mental image or like this idea in my head, like, okay, maybe I'm not as productive now, but I could be. Right? I could catch up. I could do something, whether that's realistic or not. That's why I lean into routines, because I think that's not realistic. That a lot of people can spend time not performing because they could perform, if they really tried. But like, it's comforting to think that.
Yeah. And
then you hit being sick, and you're like, no, I can't. And so like when that little like you have the same story of being a procrastinator or feeling like I'm not actually a productive person, like, or in my heart of hearts I don't want to be a productive person, or I'm lazy, whatever that story is, right? You have that core story about yourself, but then like that kind of other side of you, but I'm really smart, maybe I can pull something off at the last minute, right? That school seems to encourage, I feel. Right. So like that I think is one of the like the psychologically difficult pieces about being sick, if that's your base story, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden that like, oh well, but maybe if I'm really smart, and maybe if I try really hard, I can get something together at the last minute if I really need to.
Yeah.
Versus where I'm trying to be, which is just like, all right, I work the process, I work the routines. I'm someone who gets things done, and I just change the definition of what I'm getting done when I'm sick. Yeah. And for me, that's scaling back a lot more. And so from instead of a mindset of like doing things really well to a high standard, it's like, check the boxes.
Yeah.
Did I do something to show that I care for my kids today? Did I spend some time with them? Did I message this person to tell them I'm not going to be able to go? Like, did I do the correspondence I needed to? Just like the minimum product. And so what you said with that communication tip is we talked about that, like you're worried about a lot of things. Well, why don't you just send that short 2-sentence email and then not worry about it until you're healthy, right?
It was great. It was fantastic.
And that's kind of the check the boxes mentality.
Yeah. And for me, right. It's interesting. So I really have gotten into the internal family systems kind of like framework of psychology, where you've got all those different kind of parts of yourself, and that part of it is accepting those different parts. And there's that part of me that I label as lazy and just hedonistic sort of, but just like that pure consumer, right? That just likes to sit back and eat and watch and consume, and I label that part as bad, or I have historically labeled that part as bad. What I'm learning to do is recognizing that that's a need that I have, that I have a need to relax sometimes, to consume sometimes, and that's okay. Right? It's about not letting any one of those pieces of you take over, incorporating them all. And so what I ended up doing yesterday, after, breaking down and crying and feeling terrible, was saying, okay, well, you know what? This part of me, you get a snow day, right? Basically, like I'm going to do what I can do to check the boxes, right? That's my manager, making sure that I'm still moving forward. But then it's okay to rest if I need to rest right now. And I know I'm not going to rest forever. And even just that allowing and not blaming, right? Because, you wouldn't blame a kid for not going to school on a snow day. Yeah. Right? Just say, okay, yep, there is a part of me that really likes this. Yay. I'm going to enjoy what I can from it. So watching Spy Family, which is adorable. And I'm going to do what I can to get feeling better so that the other parts of myself can then do what they do best once I am feeling better, which will eventually happen. And I always have to remind myself that too. I will get better. I sometimes forget that.
Right. It is hard. There's a point at where you feel terrible, where like you are just like, I had a much shorter period of this, but I had one night where, for several hours where I couldn't sleep, and I just felt so awful, headachy, queasy, etc., that like, I was just constantly like, this too will pass. This too shall pass.
Yeah, and I'm like, I will never get better. Right. I am sickness personified.
I mean, the way I've been trying to reframe it, and I guess this has become a lot about like your mental game when you're sick.
Yeah.
The way I try and frame it, or have been trying recently, is like, this is an opportunity for me to show what I'm made of.
Yeah.
And so, life is not always going to be easy. It doesn't mean I have to be a workaholic when I'm feeling sick, but, being able to hold down the house, which is what, we agreed I would be doing while,
and you did it beautifully.
Yeah, it's doing necessary grocery shopping with hopefully a minimum of getting other people sick during the day, when there's not a lot of people there, and helping kids with homework, dinner and stuff. But then I also recognize it's like, all right, I met with I did client meetings, but other than that, like everything else, all right, I'm gonna tell people, again, check the boxes just enough to like get back to people, but and let them know, I'll be available in a little bit, but other than that, like, don't worry about it. And I did play some Magic the Gathering online.
Yay!
So that's my escape.
I love it. That's awesome.
All right. So thank you for joining us. A shout out to Sony for the well wishes yesterday when we posted about being sick. It means a lot to us that, there's, some of you out there paying attention, responding, and sending us well wishes. We really appreciated that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Until tomorrow, make big changes, one small habit at a time.
Bye.